Good evening. Well, there was a very big reaction overnight to the news that Coutts had closed my accounts, but more importantly, the reasons for doing so, which I got as a result of a data subject access request. Daily Telegraph splashed this on their front page today in quite a big way. Banks act Farage as he doesn't align with our values. The Daily Mail front page was in many ways even stronger. Top bank lied over Farage ban, and this was the briefing. This was the briefing that they'd given, that my accounts had been closed because my amount of money in the account had fallen below a certain level. Absolutely not true if you look at the minutes of the meeting of the 17th of November last year when they decided I would be exited. They said at the same time I was commercially viable. Well, unsurprisingly, this reached its way to Prime Minister's questions, with Jacob Rees-Mogg saying this. Right, we've lost the sound on that, which is a great shame. And here's what David Davis had to say and Rishi Sunak's reply.
The Prime Minister, back to the question raised quite rightly by my honourable friend, the member for North East Somerset. The opposition politician he was referring to, of course, was Nigel Farage, whose bank account was closed, not because he was a PEP, not because of commercial reasons, but because his views did not align with the values of Coutts Bank. A thinly veiled political discrimination, a vindictive, irresponsible and undemocratic action. But in addition, NatWest also disclosed confidential details about Farage's account to the BBC and lied about the commercial viability of his account, actions which ought to jeopardise his banking licence and should certainly worry NatWest's 19 million other customers. So he's told us what he's going to do for the future, but there are many other people in this circumstance. So can he require every bank with a British banking licence to inform the Treasury of all the accounts they've shut down for non-commercial reasons the last decade?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that the honourable gentleman has spoken to the Chancellor about this particular issue, and I know he'll continue to have those conversations. In the short term, having consulted on the payment service regulations, we do intend to crack down on this practice by toughening the rules around account closures. But in the meantime, the Financial Ombudsman Service is available for people to make complaints to, but I look forward to continuing the dialogue with him, as indeed does the Chancellor.
Well, that was Rishi Sunak's advice. Go to the Financial Ombudsman, and that's a point I'm going to bring up with Danny Kruger a bit later in the show. But he clearly, within a couple of hours, decided he wanted to go further. And this is the tweet that the Prime Minister put out. He said, "This is wrong. No one should be barred from using basic services for their political views." And interestingly, you'll see with this that Elon Musk added to the tweet saying, "Hear, hear." Musk, of course, a great defender of free speech. Now, Grant Shapps and I have never agreed on, well, anything really, over the years. He's been a Remainer and completely the opposite view to me on most things. We've never been uncivil with each other, but we've never agreed or been on the same side until this morning on GB News.
It cannot be right that when people choose to go into public service, and regardless of their views, and I'd say I don't have to agree with Nigel Farage's views or Labour politicians' views or whoever, that is not the point. The point is people should be able to get banked, and there is no excuse for the banks not allowing those bank accounts to remain open. And by the way, often to refuse to open them in the first place. So the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, have a big role in this. Guidance for them was already changed in 2017. It's clear it's not working. And that is what I think this latest fuss will help resolve. And I know that Andrew Griffiths, who, Minister, you may want to get on the programme, will be explaining to Parliament the further measures that will be taken.
So strong stuff there, really, from Grant Shapps. But Suella Braverman went even further with a tweet. She said, "The Coutts scandal exposes the sinister nature of much of the diversity, equality and inclusion industry. Apparently anyone who wants to control our borders and stop the boats can be branded xenophobic and have their bank accounts closed in the name of inclusivity. NatWest and other corporates who have naively adopted this politically biased dogma need a major rethink. This is also an issue for the public sector too, which is why I'm reviewing our policies at the Home Office." Well, I know where, fairly and squarely, Suella Braverman was aiming her language. You see, Coutts is a relatively small bank. It's a bank for the rich. It's a bank for the famous. And perhaps in my case now, a bank for the infamous as well. But the real boss of all of this is NatWest. NatWest, part of the RBS group, but they really are the parent company. And the boss of NatWest is Dame Alison Rose. Now, the Telegraph wrote a piece today, and we've seen some of this stuff before about her, but they wrote a piece today, Dame Alison Rose, the bank boss who steered Coutts' diversity drive, the chief executive of NatWest, has overseen a pivot towards saving the planet and LGBT rights since taking the helm. Well, we sent our producer, Joe Casper, to NatWest HQ today to try and get some reaction down there. And he asked a simple question. Should anyone's bank account be closed down over political views like mine? Have a listen.
No way. No
way, no.
Sorry.
It would be a mistake to close accounts on the basis of people's political views.
It's a funny one, really, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I don't know enough.
No.
No.
Not interested, sorry, pal.
Absolutely not, no. It's like people should be offered, basic services, regardless of their, political opinions or their colours, or, it's just a discrimination. It's a basic things to live. Well, hopefully it doesn't have just one account.
Yes. Why?
Because Nigel Farage is a
I think it's terrible, if that's true.
I don't know.
I don't know, mate. I've got to get to work.
I think we're all entitled to our own views, but it depends on what those views are. How radical are you going?
Well, Nigel Farage had his bank account shut down by NatWest because they thought he was a race.
Exceptional case, I agree with that.
You do agree with that?
Yes.
Why?
Because I just can't bear the man.
Why? What? Is there anything in particular that you disagree with?
His racist views. I'm trying to be balanced, but unfortunately, when it comes to him, I can't be.
Well, lots of strong views on the streets there, but of course a vast majority for common sense. Now, it is no wonder that Suella said what she said, because under Alison Rose, we've got this extraordinary situation in NatWest where staff are allowed to identify as men and women on different days as a part of a series of LGBT-friendly measures. And if you identify as non-binary, you've got a double-sided lanyard. So you can be a man one day and a woman the next day. Maybe that's what banks should be in the business for. I don't know. From most journalists and most outlets, we've seen common sense. One who hasn't come round is former BBC lifer John Sopel, now who's escaped to Global. And his original tweet said, "You must feel a bit of a Charlie if you're Nigel Farage and you claim that it's all an anti-establishment stitch-up, that your accounts have been closed, when it's just you're not rich enough for Coutts." I'm thinking of starting a GoFundMe page for Nigel to get him his bank account back. Well, I said, "Hi, John. Who is the Charlie now? It looks like you for swallowing the Coutts PR spin. I look forward to your apology." And I've got to tell you, there has been absolutely none. The BBC have not themselves either covered themselves in glory. But generally, I want to say this. Of all the times in my career when I put my head over the parapet, I've never received such cross-party political support as I have over this. But we have to take this further. This is not just about me. I'm asking you, have you been cancelled? One little example that came in today, Mr. X from Norfolk said, "My bank NatWest recently sent me a letter threatening to close my accounts with them because they say I've been paying in large cash deposits. I've banked with NatWest for 40 years, and they know that my normal banking activity, including occasionally depositing cash with them, is. On phoning my personal account manager, who has been to my house to assess my wealth and saw that I'm a vintage motorcycle collector who sometimes sells a motorbike for cash, to ask what constitutes a large cash deposit, he wouldn't tell me. He also said that people who deal in cash are criminals, tax evaders and money launderers. I recently received an email from NatWest clarifying that the maximum I can deposit in cash is £3,000. This has been happening to thousands of innocent people as a result of bad regulation and over-compliance. And I please want all of you to give me examples of what you've done. Let's stand up and let's stand together against the way the banks are behaving. Please email me, farage@gbnews.com, and our strength will be our togetherness. And if I can lead people who haven't got a voice of their own, I'll be very, very honoured and privileged to do so.